You're already on the plane. The seat is narrower than it looked online. The person in front just reclined all the way back. You've got 8 hours ahead of you, and right now, the only thing standing between you and a completely miserable experience is whether or not you prepared for this flight the right way. Long-haul flying isn't just uncomfortable, it's a specific kind of exhausting that follows you into the first 2 days of your trip. The fatigue hits different when you land. But here's the thing, most of that suffering is optional. The difference between landing wrecked and landing ready almost always comes down to what you brought with you, how you set up your environment, and a few decisions most travelers never think to make. In this video, we're going through 12 things that genuinely make long flights less frustrating and easier to sleep on. Not travel gimmicks, not stuff that sounds good in theory. Real, practical upgrades that experienced flyers already know about. If you've ever stepped off a long flight feeling like you lost a week of your life, this one's for you. Hit the like button before we start. It helps more people find content that actually solves travel problems instead of just listing them. Let's start with the item that changes everything about how you experience a flight the moment you put it on. 1. Noise-canceling headphones. Silence is not a luxury. Nothing reshapes the experience of a long flight quite like removing sound from the equation. Airplane cabins sit at a constant noise level that your brain never fully tunes out. The engine hum, the recycled air rushing through vents, the conversation 3 rows back, the child who just discovered crying. Your mind registers all of it, even while you're trying to sleep. That background noise keeps your nervous system quietly activated, which is exactly why so many people land exhausted even after sleeping for 6 hours on a flight. Noise-canceling headphones change that in a way passive earplugs simply can't. They don't just muffle sound, they actively work against it, reading the environment and generating counter frequencies that neutralize what your ears would otherwise hear. The moment you put them on in a plane, the difference is physical. The low-frequency drone disappears. The cabin feels quieter than it actually is, and your body finally gets the signal that it's okay to relax. What most people underestimate is how this affects sleep specifically. Noise is one of the biggest barriers to falling asleep mid-flight, especially during the first hour when your body hasn't settled. With that layer removed, the process becomes significantly easier. You're not fighting the environment anymore. You've stepped out of it. Beyond sleep, everything else improves too. Watching a film feels more immersive. Music sounds cleaner. Even sitting quietly becomes restful instead of numbing. For long-haul travel especially, this is the single item that delivers the most immediate, noticeable upgrade to your flight experience. The Sony WH-1000 XM5 is widely regarded as the best travel option. Excellent noise cancellation, comfortable for extended wear, and reliable battery life that outlasts most international flights. Once you experience that level of quiet in the air, it becomes very difficult to travel without it. 2. A proper neck pillow, not the one you think. Most travelers have tried a U-shaped neck pillow at some point. Most travelers have also used it for 20 minutes, realized it doesn't actually do what they hoped, and spent the rest of the flight letting their head drop sideways every time they drift off. The problem isn't neck pillows in general. It's that the standard design wasn't built for how people actually sit in airplane seats. The typical U-shaped pillow cushions the back of your neck, but it does almost nothing to stop your head from falling forward or to the side when your muscles relax. And when you're asleep, your muscles relax completely. That's when the head drops, the neck strains, and you wake up sore 20 minutes later, wondering why you bought the thing in the first place. The Turtle Travel Pillow addresses this differently. Instead of cushioning around the neck, it uses an internal support structure that holds your head upright from the side, the direction it actually needs support while you're seated. It's worn like a scarf, which sounds unusual until you try it. The result is that your head stays positioned even when you're fully asleep, which means you stop waking yourself up every time you shift. It's also lighter, more compact, and easier to pack than traditional foam pillows. For anyone who has given up on neck pillows entirely, this is worth a second attempt. The design is different enough that it solves the problem the old version never could. 3. Compression socks. Your legs will thank you at altitude. Sitting still for 8, 10, or 12 hours at altitude does things to your circulation that most people don't think about until they try to stand up and realize their legs feel strange. Blood pools in the lower limbs during extended periods of immobility, and cabin pressure at cruising altitude accelerates that process. The result is swollen feet, tight calves, heavy ankles, and in more serious cases, deep vein thrombosis, which becomes a genuine medical concern on very long flights. Compression socks apply gentle, graduated pressure along the leg, which actively encourages encourages blood to keep moving upward instead of collecting in the feet. Modern travel compression socks don't look or feel like medical equipment. They're lightweight, breathable, and designed specifically for the conditions inside an airplane cabin. You put them on before boarding and take them off when you land. That's the entire routine. The difference you notice isn't dramatic while you're wearing them, it's when you land. People who use compression socks consistently report that their legs feel substantially more normal after long flights, with less puffiness and less of that heavy, sluggish feeling that usually takes a day to go away. For red-eye flights where you're trying to arrive functional, this is one of the most underrated pieces of preparation most travelers skip entirely. 4. A sleep mask that actually blocks light. Light is a more powerful sleep disruptor than most travelers give it credit for. Your brain reads light as a signal to stay awake. It suppresses melatonin, raises alertness, and tells your circadian system that now is not the time to rest. On a long flight, you're dealing with overhead cabin lighting, screens glowing from every direction, a bright window 2 seats away, and flight attendants moving through the aisle at 3 a.m. Even with your eyes closed, light filters through your eyelids and registers in your brain. A good sleep mask removes that variable entirely. The key word is good. A thin, poorly fitted mask still lets light bleed in from the sides, which defeats the purpose. What you need is a contoured mask with enough depth around the eye area that your eyelids sit in darkness even when you open them slightly. The Manta Sleep Mask is the most recommended option for travelers because it adjusts independently around each eye, creates a full blackout, and doesn't press against your eyelids the way flat masks do. Combined with noise-canceling headphones, a proper sleep mask creates a sensory environment on a plane that closely resembles what your body needs to sleep. You've removed the 2 biggest external disruptors, noise and light, and what's left is far more manageable. For overnight long-haul flights, this combination is one of the most effective things you can do to actually sleep, instead of just lying there with your eyes closed, hoping. 5. A portable power bank, because dead devices kill the experience. Charging access on planes is one of those things that sounds more reliable than it actually is. Some seats have USB ports that don't work. Some rows don't have outlets at all. Even on flights that advertise in-seat charging, the output is often too low to meaningfully charge a phone while it's being used. And on a 10-hour flight where your phone is handling entertainment, navigation, and communication the moment you land, running out of battery isn't just inconvenient, it genuinely disrupts the experience. A quality power bank removes that dependency entirely. The Anker Power Core 10,000 is compact enough to fit in a jacket pocket, holds enough charge to refill most phones 2 to 3 times over, and delivers consistent output regardless of what your device is doing. You're not rationing screen time or hunting for a working outlet during your layover. Your devices stay charged because you brought your own charging solution. This becomes especially important on arrival. The first hour after landing often requires a lot from your phone. Navigating a new airport, confirming hotel bookings, finding ground transport, messaging people your arrival time. That's exactly when you want full battery, not 11% and a prayer. A power bank that did its job quietly in your bag for the entire flight means you step off the plane ready to move. It's a small item that removes a major point of failure. And once you've traveled with one, going back feels genuinely reckless. 6. Melatonin and a sleep strategy. Work with your body, not against it. Trying to sleep on a plane by simply closing your eyes and hoping is a strategy that works occasionally and fails most of the time. Long-haul flights often depart at hours that don't align with your natural sleep window, which means your body isn't actually primed for sleep when the cabin lights dim. You're lying there with a wakeful brain, wondering why you can't fall asleep even though you're genuinely tired. That's not a willpower issue, it's biology. Melatonin is a hormone your body produces naturally at night to signal that sleep is approaching. Taking a low-dose supplement, 0.5 milligrams to 1 milligram, is often more effective than the higher doses most products sell. About 30 minutes before you want to sleep nudges that process forward, regardless of what time zone you're in. It doesn't knock you out. It just makes your body more receptive to sleep. Combined with your sleep mask, noise-canceling headphones, and a comfortable position, it significantly increases the likelihood that you'll actually fall asleep instead of just resting with your eyes closed. The strategy element matters just as much. Decide before the flight whether you're going to sleep at the start, the middle, or toward the end. Then eat, hydrate, and use your devices accordingly. Eating a heavy meal and watching a loud action film right before you want to sleep is working against yourself. Give your nervous system 30 minutes of something calmer, music, a slow show, a podcast, and let the transition transition happen naturally. Most people who say they can't sleep on planes have never actually built a sleep environment or timed their approach. When you treat it like a system, it works. 7. A reusable water bottle. Hydration is everything at 35,000 feet. Airplane cabin air is exceptionally dry. The humidity inside a cruising aircraft typically sits between 10% and 20%, which is lower than most deserts. Your body loses moisture faster than you'd expect, and because you're sitting still and not sweating, you don't feel thirsty the way you normally would when dehydrated. That quiet, slow dehydration is a major contributor to how bad you feel after a long flight. The headache, the brain fog, the skin that feels tight, the fatigue that doesn't make sense even though you slept. The fix is straightforward. Drink more water than you think you need and make it easy to do so. Carry a reusable water bottle through security empty, fill it at a post-security fountain or cafe, and keep it within reach for the entire flight. Flight attendants are generally happy to refill it during service, which is more reliable than waiting for them to come by with the cart. A 500 milliliter to 750 milliliter bottle gives you a concrete quantity to track without being difficult to carry. Avoid replacing water with alcohol or excess coffee during the flight. Both are diuretics that accelerate fluid loss exactly when you're already losing it faster than usual. A glass of wine at cruising altitude hits differently than it does on the ground. The combination of lower cabin pressure, dehydration, and reduced oxygen availability makes alcohol more potent and significantly more damaging to sleep quality. If the goal is to land feeling like a person, water is the main tool. 8. An aisle seat, the one booking decision that changes everything. Where you sit on a long-haul flight matters far more than most people treat it when booking. The window seat has the view and the wall to lean against, both legitimate advantages. But for a 10-hour overnight flight, the aisle seat wins almost every time, for reasons that only reveal themselves in hour 4, when you've been sitting in the same position for longer than any human body was designed to. The aisle gives you the ability to stand up, stretch, and move without asking anyone's permission or awkwardly climbing over sleeping strangers. On long flights, moving your legs every 2 to 3 hours isn't just comfort, it's circulation management. The freedom to do that whenever you want, without the social friction of waking someone up, changes how the flight feels. It also means you can get to the lavatory without a negotiation, which on a very long flight becomes more significant than it sounds. The psychological effect is real too. Window and middle seats create a contained, slightly claustrophobic environment after several hours. The aisle opens the space slightly. You can extend a leg, lean out, and have the sense that you're not fully boxed in. For anyone prone to restlessness in enclosed spaces, this matters a great deal. Book the aisle seat at check-in using your airline's seat selection tool, or use Seat Guru to identify which specific rows have the most legroom on your aircraft. Small decisions made before you board determine a lot about how you feel when you land. 9. Downloaded offline content. Screens aren't always the answer. The instinct on a long flight is to work through the in-flight entertainment catalog. Pick a few films, a series, maybe a documentary, and watch until you can sleep. That's a reasonable plan, and it works for the first few hours. But screens have a way of extending wakefulness longer than intended, especially when the content is engaging enough to keep you watching past the point where you should have put it down and slept. Having an offline alternative, a physical book, a Kindle, or an audiobook downloaded before the flight gives you something that transitions you towards sleep rather than away from it. Reading fiction in particular tends to lower arousal and narrow focus in a way that supports drowsiness. It's harder to keep reading past your natural sleep window with a book than with a streaming queue that autoplays the next episode. And unlike a screen, a book doesn't emit the kind of light that suppresses melatonin and signals wakefulness to your brain. Download everything before you leave. Relying on in-flight Wi-Fi for anything is a gamble that frequently doesn't pay off. Save your podcasts, your audiobooks, your playlist, and your offline streaming downloads ahead of time. Running out of things to do 2 hours into a 12-hour flight because everything required a connection is an entirely avoidable frustration, and one that about 10 minutes of preparation eliminates completely. 10. Layers and comfort clothing. Temperature control on a plane is not guaranteed. Airplane cabin temperature is one of the most inconsistently managed variables in the flying experience. The same aircraft can feel genuinely warm in the first hour and genuinely cold by hour 3. depending on outside temperature at altitude, how full the flight is, and how aggressively the climate system is running. Airlines tend to err on the colder side because a warm cabin accelerates fatigue and nausea, which is well-intentioned but frequently overcorrected. The only reliable way to handle this is to dress in layers you can actually adjust. A thin base layer, a comfortable zip hoodie, and a lightweight scarf or pashmina that doubles as a blanket gives you the flexibility to respond to whatever the cabin decides to do. The provided airline blanket, when it exists, is typically thin and not particularly useful for staying warm. Having your own layer means you're not dependent on it. Comfort extends to your feet as well. Wearing slip-on shoes or bringing a pair of flight socks means you can remove your shoes shortly after boarding without disrupting anyone. Feet swell during long flights due to circulation changes, and tight shoes become progressively more uncomfortable as the hours pass. Loose, easily removable footwear and a fresh pair of socks to change into mid-flight sounds like a small detail. Ask anyone who does it regularly and they'll tell you it isn't. 11. An electronics organizer, the small chaos prevention tool. Every long-haul traveler eventually ends up doing the same thing, reaching into their bag for earphones, coming out with a tangled handful of cables, a charger, and two things they weren't looking for. It's a minor frustration, but on a flight where everything already requires a bit more effort than usual, small frictions add up. When your earphone cable is knotted around your charging brick at 1 a.m. in a dark cabin, it's more irritating than it has any right to be. A compact electronics organizer, the kind with elastic loops, small zip pockets, and a flat folding design, puts everything in one place in a predictable order. Earphones here, charging cables there, power bank in this pocket, adapter in that one. You open it, take what you need, zip it, and put it back. The BagSmart electronics organizer is a reliable option that fits everything most travelers carry without adding bulk. It sits flat in your carry-on and stays in your seat pocket for the flight. What this really solves is the low-level mental load of managing loose items in a small space. That load is more real than it sounds, not knowing where things are, having to search every time you want something. The creeping sense that your bag is more chaotic than it should be. Organization on a long flight isn't about neatness. It's about removing friction that accumulates over 10 hours and quietly makes everything feel harder than it is. 12. Lavender or a familiar scent, the underrated sleep trigger. This one sounds like wellness advice, and it is, but it's grounded in how sleep actually works. Your brain associates environments with behavioral states. The scent of your bedroom, the feel of your pillow, the specific darkness of your room. These are cues that trigger your nervous system's sleep mode through repeated association. An airplane cabin has none of those cues. It smells like recycled air, jet fuel, and whatever the person next to you ordered. Your brain doesn't recognize it as a sleep environment, which is part of why falling asleep feels harder than it logically should. Introducing a familiar scent changes the sensory context in a small but real way. Lavender has documented evidence supporting its effect on reducing anxiety and promoting sleep onset. It's not just marketing. A small roller ball of lavender oil or a few drops on the inside of your travel pillow creates a scent cue your brain can anchor to rest, especially if you've been using it at home in the days before the trip. Some travelers use a familiar hand lotion or a specific lip balm for the same effect. Start using it before your next flight, and you'll notice the difference. If you've made it this far, you've just done something most travelers never do before a long flight. You've actually thought it through. And that's the whole point. Long-haul flying doesn't have to be something you survive. It can be something you manage well, arrive from feeling functional, and even sleep through if the conditions are right. The gap between a miserable 10-hour flight and a manageable one almost never comes down to luck or a seat upgrade. It comes down to preparation, the right items, the right habits, and a few decisions made before you even get to the airport. Think about the last long flight you took. The fatigue that followed you for 2 days, the stiff neck, the dehydration headache, the sense that the trip started at a deficit before you'd seen anything. Most of that is fixable, not with expensive gear or complicated routines, with a handful of deliberate choices that frequent flyers figured out the hard way so you don't have to. The items in this video aren't about making flying luxurious. They're about removing the specific, predictable ways that long flights grind you down. That's what separates people who land ready from people who land wrecked. It's never one big thing. It's the accumulation of small ones. Noise handled, light blocked, hydration maintained, position optimized. Sleep actually attempted with a real strategy instead of just hope. Each of these on its own makes a small difference. Together, they transform what flying feels like. So if even one thing in this video is going on your next packing list, hit the like button right now. It's the fastest way to tell us this kind of content is worth making, and it helps other travelers find it before their next long-haul flight instead of after. Subscribe if you haven't yet. We cover travel gear, smart packing strategies, and the kind of practical insights that make every trip easier. Not just the glamorous parts, but the real, on-the-ground stuff that actually matters when you're in the middle of it. And share this with someone who has a long flight coming up. You might save them from landing like a complete disaster. We'll see you in the next one.